Hey, my friends. Today I am very excited to share with you a success story of a student of mine named Sarah. Sarah just closed on her first home and did the whole thing as a DIY home buyer. I'm super proud of her and just want to share what the whole process looked like. So, Sarah and I got connected because she had reached out after seeing some of my content. It was actually one of her friends that turned her on to my short form content. This friend knew that Sarah was looking at buying her first home and so said, hey, this guy is talking about how you can represent yourself and don't need to hire a buyer's agent. You should check it out. Well, Sarah checked it out because she's kind of a DIYer at heart, highly competent person. She's a police officer, just very much like takes responsibility for herself, wants to be in control. She's like, okay, this DIY home buyer thing sounds pretty interesting. It sounds like it could be financially advantageous as well. And so her and I got together, talked, hopped on a Zoom call is what I mean by getting together. But we talked about what her goals were, what she's looking for in her home, talked about the home buying process. We actually had 3 calls together over the course of a week where really we talked about her goals, we talked about the home buying process, and we talked about what it would look like for us to work together. And that all sounded really good to her in the end. I was able to talk her through her fears about being a self-represented buyer. She had fears that pretty much everybody has. Really, it's the fear of just, you don't know what you don't know. And buying a home is a big, big decision. And if you make mistakes, it could cost you tens of thousands of dollars, or you could be on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars in your mortgage. And you don't want to end up with a house that you hate. And so we just talked about how, okay, by having me as her coach was kind of this middle way of like, she didn't need a full-on buyer's agent that was going to get paid 2.5% to 3% of the purchase price of her home. She was looking at homes up to about $500,000. So at 3%, that would have been a $15,000 fee to an agent. But she also didn't want to go at it completely alone. And so what I offer with this real estate coaching, it really splits the difference because I'm able to give professional guidance based upon my experience of hundreds and hundreds of transactions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate successfully transacted. But I give her all of the control where I'm not having to meet her to open up doors. I'm not the one that's communicating, writing the offer, or handling negotiations. I'm empowering her as her coach to do all of that herself at a fraction of the cost of having a full-on buyer's agent. So we talked about how I was going to be able to be the sounding board for her, how she would have direct access to me anytime that there were questions or things that came up. And we got to work. Now, Sarah was just super sharp. She had already gotten her pre-approval letter through a local lender. She knew how much her maximum loan amount was that she was approved for, but she'd also done some good work with her personal finances and knew how much she was comfortable spending on her home, on her mortgage, and had already worked those numbers out. So she was approved for $500. She knew that she didn't want to spend any more than $450. So those are the numbers that we were working with. And then I helped her figure out what areas she really wanted to be looking in. And we use different online tools for market research, being able to find out what the best neighborhoods for her were based upon her lifestyle, her goals, proximity to family and work. We also talked about different neighborhoods within those larger communities and areas, and we were really able to hone in her search to a couple of very specific neighborhoods, which was great. And then we talked about her exact housing needs, what it was that she really wanted in a house. And for her, it was more important to have a larger yard and more space between houses than to have something that was brand new. So again, using online tools, Zillow in particular here, we were able to set up a really amazing search for her so that she's being sent listings directly. And anytime that she had something that she was really interested in, she might send it my way to just kind of dialogue about it, get my thoughts if there's anything that I thought was a red flag or that I thought she should look into further. Ultimately, whenever she found something that she really wanted to see in person, if there was an open house and we were close to the weekend, she would make arrangements to go to the open house. But if she saw something on a Wednesday or there wasn't an open house scheduled, then I just talked her through how to call the listing agent directly to set up a showing as a self-represented buyer. And those conversations went really well because she was respectful in those calls to the listing agent, described the fact that she was an unrepresented buyer, but that she was working with somebody who's in the industry that's coaching her through it. She's got education, she's got the pre-approval letter, she's serious. And that was really all she needed to establish with these listing agents, was that she was a legit buyer. She was to be taken seriously. And when she set that stage, fortunately, pretty much every listing agent she talked with was more than accommodating to find a time to meet with her at the property within 24 hours or so that she could tour. In the time of us working together, there were 5 homes that she toured through. And when she went to those tours, I gave her a checklist of everything that I wanted her to look at, take pictures of, write down, ask questions about. That was very helpful to her. We would debrief that after she had toured the homes. And then on that 5th home, she was like, hey, this is the one. I'm ready. I'm ready to make an offer. And at this point, she called the listing agent to say, hey, I'm ready to put an offer together for this house. Can you send me the standard purchase and sale agreement forms? I'd also talked her through the different contingency options. She knew what contingencies she wanted, so she asked for the standardized forms for those contingencies as well. Fortunately, this listing agent, based upon the state that she's in, those forms are more publicly available than in some states, and so the listing agent just sent those right over to her, and I talked her through them. Now, I didn't fill them out for her, but we just talked through each line, each question that she had, and ultimately got her to a place where she was very confident about the offer that she was putting in. Now, she was a bit concerned. The house had only been on the market for a couple of days at the point that she saw it. It was a hot market. There were other showings that were scheduled to be coming through, so she knew she wanted to be competitive. So what she did was a full price offer at $440,000. So again, under that $450,000 threshold that she'd set for herself. She was clever, and she had asked the listing agent if the seller was offering to pay a buyer agent compensation. The listing agent said that there was an offer of 2.5%. So what she did was she also said that she wanted a 2.5% purchase price reduction as part of her offer, since the seller was already planning on paying that. So that was an $11,000 purchase price reduction. And then she had just standard contingencies with home inspection, title contingency, financing contingency, which included an appraisal contingency, and a few other different addendums that were in there for her own protection. She made the offer got accepted. She was super excited. Part of that was just because of how quickly she was able to get it in, and because essentially it was a full price offer. The seller was already planning on giving a 2.5% concession for a buyer's agent, so she was able to just leverage that for her own benefit, which again is one of the number one benefits, being a self-represented buyer and for us to work together. So then, once the offer was accepted, I talked her through the next steps, that she needed to get the fully signed, fully executed purchase and sale agreement off to her lender, get things set up with the title and escrow company that her and the seller had agreed to in the purchase and sale agreement, and that she needed to put all of the dates, contractual obligations, into her calendar. So things like when each contingency would expire. And then I helped her talk through just, okay, inspection contingency, what needed to get lined up for that. She had a connection with a home inspector through her dad and got that inspection scheduled. The inspector highlighted some issues with the roof, so she had a couple of roofers come out to give additional thoughts and bids, and ultimately found that the roof did need to be replaced, or at least it was going to need to be replaced at some point in the next 5 to 10 years. There was just some question marks. It looked like some of the shingles were wearing unevenly, perhaps because of being pressure washed. Perhaps it was a faulty perhaps it was just a faulty tile that they had put on the roof. Whatever it was, roofer said, yep, needs to be replaced in the midterm sort of future. Well, Sarah, being the savvy buyer and negotiator that she was, thought, okay, $18,000 was what she had gotten quoted on the roof replacement. She said, I don't expect really for the seller to replace the whole roof. Also, my dad is in the trades, has connections with roofers. I'm sure that I can get it done cheaper, and it doesn't need to be done right away. But that is still a liability and expense that I'm taking on, and it would be really helpful if I was able to get my closing costs covered. And so what she did was, we just talked through a negotiation strategy. She really wanted a $10,000 closing cost credit from the sellers. So she was going to just ask for $10,000 straight up. But I said, you know what? I would recommend that you request the full $18,000. And we talked about the negotiation strategy behind that. Long story short, she did. She sent that. The seller said, no, but let's split it. Let's do $9,000. And then from there, she was able to negotiate them up from $9,000 to $10,000, because, you know, what's another $1,000, especially when they're not paying the whole $18,000. We used that anchoring of $18,000 to get her exactly what it was that she wanted. And remarkably, everything else was very smooth sailing from there. The appraisal came back at $450,000. She was getting an $11,000 purchase price reduction based upon not having a buyer's agent, and she got an additional $10,000 closing cost credit for a net of $21,000 of savings off of that $440 purchase price. Anyhow, just got an amazing deal on this home, because what's $440 minus 11 minus 10 is, man, math is so hard. And I don't even know how to use a calculator. So yeah, $419,000 is what she ended up getting this home that appraised for $450,000 for. I was beyond thrilled for her. And it was great because I was able to be in her corner and answer her questions without taking the reins. She was in the driver's seat the entire time, which she found to be a really rewarding experience. And because she had that experience and went through it herself, now she's got all the confidence in the world the next time that she buys a home to handle it again as a self-represented buyer. And the point of sharing this story is just to say, Sarah's not alone. Yes, she is a highly competent woman. She is definitely somebody that takes ownership and responsibility, likes to be in control of things. But she is kind of the example of a new wave of home buyers that are taking control of the home buying process themselves, that are representing themselves, and that are finding ways to save significant money by doing so. So hopefully in hearing Sarah's story, you realize, okay, this is definitely possible for me as well the next time that I buy a home. And if you have questions about the home buying process, well, that's why you should subscribe to this channel. Every week, and more than every week, I am creating content that teaches you about the home buying process, how you can successfully navigate the process without hiring a buyer's agent. I'm here to empower you to do that and to save tens of thousands of dollars in commissions. So do subscribe and leave a comment below congratulating Sarah. DIY home buying worked for Sarah. It'll work for you as well. With more questions, just leave me a comment, subscribe, or shoot me an email, hello@DIY Homebuyer Academy. We'll go from there.